Finance Committee meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Member Chaplin,
Here.
Member Chavez, Member Covert, Member Desart, Member DeCiani, Member Eckhoff, Member Garcia, here, Member Hart, Member Krajewski, Member LaPlante, Member Ozog, Member Pachalski, Member Renahan, Member Rutledge,
Here.
Member Schwarzy, Member Selman, Member Tornatori, and Member Zay.
Okay, we have a quorum. Do we have any public comment this morning? Okay, no public comment. My chairwoman remarks will be made under new business. So with that, can I have a motion to approve the regular Finance Committee meeting minutes from April 26th? I have a motion by, who was it? Member Krajewski and a second by Member Schwarzy. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. No. Oh, yeah. I did. Oh, and no public comment from the audience, correct? Yeah. Okay. I would like to have a motion on budget transfers FIR 020622, budget transfers 510-2022 from various companies and accounting units. I have a motion by Member Garcia, a second by Member Renahan. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. We move on to procurement requisitions. Member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on a change order amendment to purchase order 5383-0001 issued to B2B Supplies USA LLC to increase the contract in the amount of $2,000 to cover the cost of additional toners for a new contract not to exceed $11,014.50.
A motion by Member Krajewski and a second by Member Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Member Krajewski. We move on to environmental. Member Rutledge.
Thank you, Chair Chaplin. I move on ENP 014622, the recommendation for the approval of an agreement between the County of DuPage, Illinois and Aptim Environmental and Infrastructure LLC for professional engineering services for the DuPage County Solid Waste Management Plan 5-year update and unincorporated waste hauling services study for the period of May 11, 22 through November 30th of 22 for a total contract amount not to exceed $90,000. Other professional services not subject to competitive bidding per 55 ILCS.
I have a motion by Member Rutledge, a second by Member Salmon. Discussion. Member Zay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, a question. How is this not subject to competitive bidding for garbage hauling?
Do we have anybody from staff or environmental that can answer that question?
I mean, usually it's surveying, professional services. I don't see how waste hauling is some kind of special that's exempt from open bidding.
This is Joy. Can I answer the question?
Thank you, Joy.
Yeah.
Of course. Good morning, members. This is not for waste hauling. This is for DuPage County Solid Waste Management Plan. The second aspect of this is to do a study to see if unincorporated waste hauling is feasible in DuPage County.
So shouldn't that be broken out then in two contracts, not put it under one contract that says it's exempt?
We talked to the state's attorney's office about this, and they felt that it was a professional service and fell under the other contractual services. It's also something that we need to use a consulting engineering firm for the data.
Okay, and what kind of, isn't this usually handled by the townships?
It can be. Lake County recently held it at the county level, so we were investigating whether this is viable in DuPage County.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Member Zay. Member Krajewski.
You just let Downers Grove Township went out years ago and did that consolidation to one waste hauler for all the unincorporated areas in Downers Township. So they may want, Joy, you may want to reach out to them. They did a bidding process, et cetera. And it's Downers Township, so there's multiple mayors in that township. But yeah, it was Mark Tolman was the supervisor when they did it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Member Krajewski. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Mike, thank you, Member Rutledge. With that, we move on to Health and Human Services, Member Renahan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move approval of HHS CO 0016-22, amendment to county subgrantee contract with Loaves and Fishes for CSBG CARES funds to extend the contract through September 30th, 2022 to provide essential household supplies, personal care items, diapers, wipes, cleaning supplies, to increase the contract by 20,000.
Okay, I have a motion by Member Renahan, a second by Member Dysart. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Renahan.
Thank you. I move approval of HHS CO 0017-22. This is an amendment to county subgrantee contract 51290001, serve with West Suburban Community Pantry. Also CSBG CARES funds extending contract through September 30th, 2022, providing these household supplies, personal care items, diapers, wipes, and cleaning supplies, increasing this contract by 42,000.
Okay, I have a motion by Member Renahan, a second by Member Dysart. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Member Renahan. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I move approval of HHSP 0161-22, recommendation for approval of a contract purchase order to McKesson Medical Surgical Government Solutions LLC. This is for incontinent products for the care center, June 1st, 2022 through May 31st, 2023, not to exceed 120,000.
Okay, I have a motion by Member Renahan, a second by Member Dysart. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Member Renahan. We move on to Judicial Public Safety and Member Renahan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move approval of JPSP 0152-22, recommendation for approval of a contract to LDV Inc. for purchase of a mobile command post for the Sheriff's Office in Merritt, providing vehicle for safe, effective, and efficient on-scene operational needs for long-term and complex investigations and incident responses, not to exceed $802,667 for the Sheriff's Office.
Okay, I have a motion by Member Renahan, a second by Member Dysart. Any discussion? Member Dysart.
Thank you, Chairwoman Chaplin. This is a pretty intense vehicle, and one of the questions I neglected to ask during JPS last week is training on how to use this vehicle and the equipment inside is included in the cost for up to 8 hours. So I'm wondering if that's 8 hours for one person or like 1 hour for 8 people, and what the cost would be if 8 hours is insufficient to learn how to use this vehicle.
Okay, thank you, Member Dysart. Do we have somebody from the Sheriff's Office on to answer that question?
Questions?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Training for one person.
And how much?
Hi.
How much?
We're here from the sheriff's office.
Oh, here they come. Okay, thank you, guys. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Sorry, you guys froze over there. This is Dan Billady from the sheriff's office. Member Dysart, I heard most of your question. I think you were asking about the training that LDV is including for this, but you guys froze up on us on Zoom here.
Oh, okay. Thank you for being on, Dan. I was asking, there is 8 hours of training included in this contract. And I'm wondering if that's training for one person or 8 people, or how many people are going to be trained, number one. And number two, because this vehicle is so intense, what if 8 hours isn't enough? How much would a training hour cost beyond what's in the contract?
The vehicle is large and it looks pretty intense, especially when you look at that schematic, but by and large, it's going to be relatively simple for our operators to utilize because we've been utilizing this type of equipment for a while. This is just a much newer version. LDV is just going to show us how all of their different aspects work. It has some push out components to it and some technology that's in there. They're going to be more than willing to train us on whatever we need. If we need more than 8 hours, we'll get more than 8 hours. And if we need to send 15 people up there, we'll pack a bus and go up to Wisconsin and learn everything we need to learn about how to use this vehicle. I don't foresee any challenges with that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then obviously somebody on the Sheriff's Department will be able to train other people as they come on board.
Oh, absolutely. We do monthly training on all of our vehicles with all of our drivers. So it'll be everybody that drives that vehicle will know how to use every last component of it.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chairwoman.
You. Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, Member Renahan. We move on to Public Works, and I believe Member Hart, you'll be taking over? Okay,
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair Chaplin. First, I move to amend PWP 0158-22
recommendation for the approval of a contract with Revere Electric Supply Company for Rockwell Automation Software Support SCADA System to reflect a contract total not to exceed of $58,863. I believe the correct amount was omitted by accident. The departmental allocations were stated correctly, but wasn't reflected that way in the amount. in the
Okay,
agenda.
a motion by member Hart and a second by member Desart to amend item 1 under Public Works. Any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Member Hart?
Thank you. I move on PWP 0158-22 as amended.
The motion by member Hart, a second by member Zay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, member Hart. Member Zay?
Morning, Madam Chair. I move on SMP 15922, recommendation approval of contract issued to Robinson Engineering for on-call professional engineering services not to exceed $95,000.
I have a motion by member Zay, a second by member Pachowski. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Zay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on SMP 16022, recommendation approval contract issued to Strand and Associates for on-call drains professional engineering services not to exceed $70,000.
Motion by member Zay, a second by member Desart. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, member Zay.
Madam Chair.
We move on to technology. Member Selman?
Thank you, Member Chaplin. I move on TEP 162-22, a recommendation for the approval of a contract purchase order to AT&T to provide a distributed attendance system for the lower level of the 503 building. This contract covers May 15th, 2022 through November 30th, 2022 for a total amount of $82,000. This is sole source and an ARPA item.
I have a motion by member Selman, a second by member Desart. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, member Selman. We move on to transportation. Member Pachowski?
Good morning, Chair Chaplin. Move to approve amendment DTR 01728-22, amendment to a resolution issued to K5 Construction Company for the 2022 Pavement South Program section. It's a correction of a Scrivener's error.
I have a motion by member Pachowski, a second by member Desart. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Pachowski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move to approve DTP 0153-22, recommendation for approval of contract to go out Hamilton Associates for professional traffic engineering assistance and signal coordination and timing for a contract not to exceed $180,000.
I have a motion by member Pachowski, a second by member Desart. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Member
Thank you,
Pachowski?
Madam Chair. Move to approve DTP 0154-22, recommendation for approval of contract tonight, EA Inc. for professional phase 2 design engineering service improvements along Fabian Parkway from Route 38 to the county line for contract not to exceed $720,948.86.
I have a motion by member Pachowski, a second by member Desart. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member
Thank
Pachowski?
you, Madam Chair. Move to approve DTP 0155-22, recommendation for approval of contract to Patrick Engineering Inc. to provide professional preliminary phase 1 and phase 2 design engineering for improvements to the bridge carrying Geneva Road over the west branch of the DuPage River for a contract amount not to exceed $531,924.03.
I have a motion by member Pachowski, a second by member Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Welcome, member DeCiani. Good morning. We move on. Go ahead, member
Thank you,
Pachowski.
Madam Chair. Move to approve DTP 0156-22, recommendation for approval of contract to Standard Equipment Company to furnish and deliver one EnviroSite over X sewer camera for the Division of Transportation for contract not to exceed $148,902.41.
We have a motion by member Pachowski, a second by member Desart. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member
And
Pachowski.
lastly, move to approve DTP 0164-22, recommendation to approve a contract to Atlas Engineering Group Limited for professional structural engineering service upon request of the Division of Transportation for a contract not to exceed $350,000.
Motion by member Pachowski, second by member Desart. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Welcome, member Covert. We move on to informational items. Member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to receive and place on file informational items: A, payment of claims, 8A; B, appointments, and C, grant proposal notifications.
Okay, we have a motion to receive and place on file informational items A, B, and C by member Krajewski, a second by member Tornatori. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. With that, we move on to our discussion. And the first item under discussion is the ARPA funding for water connection assistance. And I'm going to call Nick up in a few minutes, but I'm going to make some opening remarks on this. So recently, I've had a number of residents throughout DuPage County contact me about the possibility of financial assistance from DuPage County to help them move from their private wells to Lake Michigan water. I'd like to have the discussion today to determine if an interest would exist in developing an ARPA funding allocation for assisting the residents of DuPage County, both incorporated and unincorporated, to transition to Lake Michigan water. As everybody knows, I personally experience what it's like to be impacted by well contamination and know the importance of making Lake Michigan water available to residents of the county. I've also verified that a program like this would be eligible for ARPA funding. Although we can make any changes to this program that Finance Committee members would like to incorporate, these are my initial program thoughts. Make $1 million available to residents of DuPage County to help with the transition from well water to Lake Michigan water. This would be a reimbursement-based program to the residents that would reimburse up to $3,000 or 50% of the total cost, whichever is less, associated with transitioning to Lake Michigan water. Eligible costs for reimbursements would include any cost associated with upgrading to Lake Michigan water, including connection fees, installation of a new service line, or required upgrades in the home needed to accommodate the new service. Only residential homes will be qualified for this program. This will not be open to commercial or industrial properties. A reimbursement will be made directly to the residents from DuPage County after it is confirmed that they have transitioned to Lake Michigan water and provided verification of expenditures. Only expenses incurred after the start of this program would be considered. This program will help make Lake Michigan water available to more than 300 homes in DuPage County. At this time, I'd like to hear the Finance Committee thoughts or suggestions regarding this program and if staff should move forward with the official development of this program. If there's a consensus to implement a water connection assistance program, staff will then work with the state's attorney's office to develop a resolution that reserves $1 million in ARPA funding and formally establishes the parameters of the program. So I see Member Zay and Member Eckhoff have some questions. Member Zay, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Member Chaplin. I mean, it sounds like a good idea, but I mean, I think there's a lot more to it. I mean, I don't want to get people's hopes up if they live in an unincorporated area that they're going to get Lake Michigan water when there's no supply of Lake Michigan water within miles of that area. The connection cost is not the big cost. It's running the pipes from whatever municipality or the county to that area. And you could be talking about miles. When we ran into Bartlett, I mean, that was a $17 million project to run pipe from Roselle to Bartlett. So
Yeah.
again, I think you have to, before we move forward, we need to get more answers. You need to talk to the stakeholders, need to talk to the municipalities who supply water and the county to those unincorporated areas and incorporated areas. I know when there's contamination, but I mean, we kind of got to take the small steps first and make sure that there actually is Lake Michigan water in those areas first before we start a program.
Yeah,
Because
well-
that's not the B-box connection's not the big cost. It's running the pipe to those areas. And again, I'd hate to get people's hopes up thinking they're gonna get Lake Michigan water when there's nobody servicing it within miles, and, you know, it would be, you know,
Yeah.
major cost to do that. So it sounds good on its face, but I think there needs to be more discussion and seeing what areas we're talking about. And obviously the Water Commission would work with the county to get the stakeholders together. I think the water supplier should, you know, weigh in on this. And I mean, we should get, you know, anybody before 1985 is going to have a lead pipe connection. So, I mean, how many houses are we actually talking about here in DuPage County?
Yep.
I mean, there could be hundreds of thousands. So, I mean, that's, you know, the $1 million sounds nice, but this could be a $20-30 million project.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate your comments. And in discussing with staff, what we what the parameters will be. It will only be available to those that have infrastructure in front of their homes that can connect. And the fee would be from the B box to the home. That's what we would help with the connection. Now, out in Downers Grove, for example, I don't have the pictures, but I can show you, I have people with brown sludge coming out of their faucets. And I know they are having to pay a lot of expenses, and reimbursement of that $3,000 for the connection fee would be of great benefit to them. And we were thinking if this $1 million program took off, we can allocate a little bit more money towards it if we see people really wanting it, but it would really only be for those that have the infrastructure in front of their homes. Not that we're bringing infrastructure throughout the county. It would just be for those that can connect. And we know, I believe that there's quite a few people in the unincorporated area that we have our water system out there that would like to connect, but that connection fee is a little bit steep for them. So that was our thinking with this program. So I'll call on Member Eckhoff and Member Krajewski and Member DeCiani and Member Rutledge and Member Garcia. Let me write these down. Okay, go ahead, Member Eckhoff.
Did you say that this was only going to help 300 homeowners?
Well, right now it would be with the $1 million, it would be about 300 homeowners, and it's a pilot program. We want to see how many people apply.
And it's only $3,000 to connect?
Well, the connection fee may be 7,000, maybe 10,000, but we're going to reimburse them 3,000 or up to 50% of that connection fee.
Because I mean, when I was with the city of Wheaton, go ahead and click it. We always had a situation where there's a tap-in fee, but that tap-in to the Lake Michigan water or regular water greatly enhances the value of the property. It's not like they're paying that and that's going out the window. So I don't think that that's really something that should be done for these select few people. There's a pipe, usually if there's a pipe run down the street for a development, there's maybe a 10-year recapture agreement that's put into place and people have to pay a little bit over time. And maybe we can look at giving them low interest loans or something, but just to give them a $3,000 grant, I think is a lot of money spent for a very few number of DuPage County residents. I'm getting a phone call from the Wheaton Sanitary District that they've got a couple of plans that they'd like to put into place. And I've been told by staff they don't want to open that Pandora's box yet because there's a number of sanitary districts out there with plans. But I would think a sanitary district's plans with $1 million is going to benefit a lot more homeowners than $1 million for 300 homeowners. I don't think that's a good use of the money.
Thank you, Member Eckhoff. Member Krajewski, the Member Rutledge, the Member Garcia, Member DeCiani.
This question is more for Nick. If you guys said. So would this be for like Liberty Park, which, I know Westmont's split between District 2 and 3, but I've been, had a lot of calls from the Westmont Council plus their staff with regards, and you've been working on Liberty Park area. Would that qualify over there?
This program, as Chair Chaplin and I have discussed, would be applied both for incorporated and unincorporated. So the Westmont project as well, the Liberty Park, both the Downers Grove, Westmont, we're currently building a new project down in the Timber Lakes area. They would qualify. And over the years, all of the water projects that we have constructed, there are probably 50, 75 homes that have not connected for various reasons, financial being one of them. They would all apply. Anybody, and I don't know the numbers in incorporated DuPage who haven't connected, but it would be open to everybody across the county. And the 3,000, the 300 homes that it would benefit is simply the $3,000 times 300 is about, so it's like 333 homes could connect for the $1 million theoretically.
Okay, yeah, so, I'd be supportive of that. I know there's, like I said, I had reached out and I passed on to you a number of, like, especially that Liberty Park area, but Timber Lakes. We just recently, I know Stormwater just put in a bunch of money for Bruce Lake area, which is in my district. Spent a lot of money with what we're going to do there. That only benefited, thank you, Jim, but that only benefited the few hundred residents that were in that area, and we dumped a bunch of money in. We do that all the time in various stormwater projects. We help a certain area. Granted, it only helps those people in that area, but we do. I mean, I'm okay with it, especially if it allows the couple of ones that have been reaching out to me that want to do it, helps them out. So.
Thank you, Member Krajewski. I have Member Rutledge, Member Garcia, and then Member DeCiani.
Thanks, Chair Chaplin. Well, this is kind of speaking to me. I've lived on well and septic for over 30 years. And I know in my old neighborhood over in Warrenville, there was kind of a strong arm effort by Wheaton Water Reclamation to run a water line through that neighborhood. And probably only 3 people out of that whole neighborhood actually wanted to connect. So I love the idea, but I don't like the idea of paying a water bill. So there is those costs that are associated. And then my other question is, why just Lake Michigan water, and how much of the county would be eligible for Lake Michigan water?
Well, like we said, it would be for people that have the infrastructure in front of their homes. And as Nick has said, he's had unincorporated residents reach out to him about connecting to our system, but that connection fee is costly and it's prohibitive. So there are people that want access to Lake Michigan water, and there are people that are willing to pay their water bill. And, you know, I think has a county board that wants to keep our county healthy and safe. And, you know, I think that having access to a good, safe water supply, which Lake Michigan water is, probably the best water supply in the country or the world, Members A. And, you know, I think that we should make that access, you know, have people have that access to that Lake Michigan water. ARPA specifically allows for connections to water, good water systems. And so I think it would be a great use of our money. As I said, you know, out in Downers Grove, we have over 500 people. And I mean, I can get the pictures for you, but they have really brown sludge and yellow and dirty water coming out of their faucets. It's not contaminated, but I certainly wouldn't want to drink a glass of brown water, and I wouldn't want to bathe my children in it. You know, they have to boil it. So who wants to be doing that? Their system is aging, it's failing. And even I believe there's issues with the fire department, that when the fire department comes out there, if they would have to tap in, the mains would break, they have to bring in a truck. So there's a lot of issues out there. But like I said, the people that, you know, there are people that have contacted me about, you know, helping them get access to Lake Michigan water. So,
well, I guess I want to know, or I'm asking, what the percentage of our county that has access to Lake Michigan water, and what are the other sources for the the incorporated areas?
Nick, do you know that? I think it's just Lake Michigan and well water.
Well, I can tell you, it's.
And American Water Works. Yeah.
I mean, it's either Lake Michigan water, you're on a well.
Yeah.
And that's, and West Chicago has their own water system. They have they have their own pumping plant in West Chicago.
Right. So thank you, Member Rutledge, Member Garcia, and then Member DeCiani, then Member Schwarzy.
Thank you, Chair Chaplin. When I used to work for the Village of Lisle, we had the same contamination as Chair Chaplin did in the area. So I dealt with a lot of the homeowners who love their wells, but because of the contamination, they had to switch to lake water. And I personally think one of the tenets of the ARPA funding is to give people clean water. I mean, I personally would not want to turn on my faucet and have brown water coming through. So I think this is a great program. One thing that we offered back in the village when I worked there was it was a 0% financing, and then they could pay back through their water bill slowly. I know those many people would love to improve their homes, Member Ackoff, but you know, we're paycheck to paycheck families. I lived that way most of my life. So we don't have that funds available to actually improve our homes like that. So as much as that sounds great, I think that this would be a great program to help those that cannot afford it and don't have the money set aside so that they can feel better living in their homes. And it's something that I think we should be proud of in DuPage County, is having the cleanest water, Members A, that we have anywhere in the whole wide world. So I think this is something we absolutely should look into and be proud of doing in DuPage County.
Thank you, Member Garcia. I have Member DeCiani next.
Thank you, Chair Chaplin. I think this is a good move. In Elmhurst, we actually established a similar program with 5,000 a household and a 50-50. But it was primarily for stormwater and sanitary water. So I would recommend that we include in the connection to the storm and sanitary, so that you know, we address flooding issues, we address septic issues. We have a lot of problems with some of those homes with
older septic tanks that leak into neighbors' yards, et cetera. So if we're going to do it, let's do this right. And let's include the whole system.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And we did discuss sewer and sanitary, and we thought, let's see how this program with the water takes off. And if it does take off, then I believe we were going to consider bringing forward that next step. So definitely,
you know,
it's very
providing-
important. I totally agree because I'm on septic and I understand, I get it.
I'd be willing to move that 3,000 to a 5,000 number and
And increase
the
it.
million to 2 million and do it right.
Well, that's some, if the,
Having been here and done that before, I think it might be a good move. This way we address the entire system and we also don't cause any extra flooding, which I think is important.
yeah, if that's the will of this committee, I would totally support that. So thank you. Appreciate it. Member Schwarzy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm just a little confused. Is this just allowing unincorporated homes to bypass annexing into their municipality to get this?
Absolutely not. No, has nothing to do with annexation. I believe they would have to sign an agreement when they connect to well water. So it has nothing to do with that at all.
If they chose to, I mean, if they wanted Lake Michigan water, couldn't they annex into the municipality and still?
Well, they have to annex into the municipality to get the water. This has nothing to do with that. This is helping them pay for that connection. So because a lot of people that I've spoke to, especially in the Liberty Park, they're moderate to low income. They don't qualify. We looked at CDBG grants. We tried every avenue to help them connect to water. There's a lot of people that need water that just don't have $10,000 sitting around their house to connect to the water.
Okay.
And that's really what the purpose of this is.
That helps. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Member Pachowski?
You know, back in the day, before Addison got Lake Michigan water, we had the same thing. The water was brown or yellow. So I agree with Commissioner Garcia that water is real important. I would like, don't we enter an SSA because we're talking 7,000 or 10,000? This is spread over a 20-year period of time. So it's not like the homeowner's coming up with 7,000 or 10,000 at one time. Isn't it paid over a period of time like any SSA's done?
No, this is not an SSA. Nick can come up and address that for you. There's not the SSA.
Can
but
we,
yeah.
the situation you described is horrific, but I would like to know if we have other areas of the county that are just as bad, because I think we ought to expand this program. Because quality water should be a right that every resident has in DuPage, and Lake Michigan water should be something, if possible, we should get. So I would like to see what other areas are in need like this and make this program a little bit more expansive, because quality water should be something that everybody should have in DuPage.
Thank you, Member Pachowski. I just want to address real quick. Thank you, Member Pachowski. I really appreciate those comments. And we wanted to come forward with a conservative number because we weren't sure how the committee would respond. So if it's the will of this committee to increase that funding to broaden it, absolutely. But go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I just want to make something clear. The mainline infrastructure in the streets would not be paid for as part of this program. This program is assuming that main line is in place already, or the residents have done an SSA and it is on their taxes. This is simply from the main line to the house, which is, even when we do an SSA, that is a private cost that residents have to bear. And this is,
yes,
yeah, that, and so those are typically not included in an SSA. And those have become a financial barrier to some, even though it's under taxes and they're paying for it, they can't connect in and enjoy that Lake Michigan water.
Thank you, Nick. Okay, I have Member Tornatori, the Member Zay, the Member Desart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think anybody can argue against clean water, so it's pretty much a relatively easy decision. However, I think before we allocate a certain amount of money, I'd like to know how many homes are in a position to connect, and then multiply that times the amount that it would cost them or we're going to reimburse them. And then we'll know what that total number is, because if we establish $1 million and there's 1,000 homes that want to connect here, we obviously can't give them $3,000 or $5,000 a piece. So I think we got to work from the bottom up in order to get that number.
Well, and I think Nick can maybe address that, because I asked that same question. How many homes are there? I don't believe we know that exact amount. And each home, depending on the footage from their street to their house, that's what the cost of the connection could be. So it could be anywhere from maybe 3,000. If you have a deep lot, it could be 15,000. So
Well, my other point too is that this program has got to be made available to everyone and
Yes.
anyone in the county who wants to do it. And again, I don't know how many people that would be who would potentially do it and how many people would actually do it, or who might be like some people who just decide that they're happy with the water that they have.
So as far as the number of people that would be available to take this program, I would be able to come up with a fairly good estimate for unincorporated, because the unincorporated properties are either serviced by well or by DuPage County's water systems out there. So that's a number I can come up fairly easily. The number where I'm lacking on would be if municipalities have anybody not connected, and I would probably maybe ask member Zay with his water commission hat to help with, to maybe come up with that. As far as a cost per home, I can tell you that the typical average cost for a homeowner to connect, if a main is in front, you have the B box there, is anywhere from $5,000 to $9,000, depending on the routing and the distance. And that's usually the cost of doing that. This program, if I recall correctly, Chair Chaplin, you were going to do 3,000 or 50% of the cost, whichever is less, correct?
Correct, yes.
So that the homeowners would still be responsible for half the cost.
Okay, and that's great. And you basically told me you don't know how many homes.
For unincorporated, I mean.
So we have to do that due diligence. Now, the second part is the incorporated homes. It's my understanding from my days as a village trustee, if you're incorporated into a town, you can get that water from that town. You just got to make whatever arrangements you can. And I don't know, and I think there's a difference here between the unincorporated people who don't have that opportunity and the people in incorporated areas who do.
Yeah.
Now, again, financial issues may play a big part in those people in the incorporated areas who choose not to do it or can't do it. But what about all the other people who made those financial decisions?
Right.
over the years?
Well, we didn't have ARPA money
Well, I
years
understand
ago.
that.
And, just like our small business loans, right? We didn't give those out prior and we gave them out. We gave 15 million to small businesses. But here's the thing with the water connections in the unincorporated area. The unincorporated area has access. If they have a water main in front of them, their access to that water is, from my understanding, no different from a person incorporated. They can both access this water.
But they have to pay more.
No,
If you're an
they have to, you
unincorporated,
pay more.
You usually pay 1.5 times.
You pay more for the water,
Right,
not
for
for the
water.
connection.
Wow, okay.
Right, you pay more for the water, right, unless you annex. Now, if they sign an annexation agreement, then their water would be the same as an incorporated resident, from my understanding. But if they don't sign that annexation agreement, then they would pay more because we pay more, we annex in, the village of Downers Grove allowed us access without annexation. But we do pay more in our water bill. But as far as that connection, unincorporated and incorporated, if they have a water main in front of them, there's no difference for them connecting. It's just a matter of getting that money for these connections.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't mean to dominate, but the difference would be incorporated homes under this program. There would be a benefit to those municipalities because they're going to get paid money for this water that's going to come from Lake Michigan water through that municipality
Absolutely.
at our cost. So I guess my ultimate point is maybe we got to talk to the municipalities and get them on board with this program, because if homes in those municipalities are going to benefit from this, then I think that maybe they should have some skin in the game here as well.
Well, and Sam, I share that. And I talked about that with Nick. I said,
Great minds think alike, Liz. You know,
we
it
do.
works out.
And I was saying, it's a great benefit to the municipalities to have these residents hook up, because from then on, they're going to get that water bill forever, right? So, and that's why I don't understand why there's not more of an effort on our municipal partners to get these people hooked up to Lake Michigan water, especially those that really, really want it. So I agree. And I had the same concerns and thoughts as you did. So thank you for your comments. Member Zay, then Member Garcia, then Member Desart, then Member Eckhoff. So go ahead, Member Zay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a whole part of the funding, the ARPA funding, the county has not taken a look at all.
Mhm.
While we're out spending money on everything else, this is a major part of the ARPA funding that we haven't even looked at.
Right.
So $1 million is a drop in the bucket. I just want to make sure, talking to Nick, because you did ask about some of this area. Some of this area, they do have water. It's the system that's providing them the water is having the problem. It's not their individual water. It's the water coming from the street that is bad, that infrastructure has to be changed. Nick, I mean, that's what we investigated.
Yeah, yep.
I can tell you, you're spot on with that. Some of the areas we're talking about, it's a private group system, a private group well that is creating the problem. So absolutely,
So that-
we're talking both
So the
private
connection,
wells.
right, the connection from the house to the street really isn't gonna do it. It's
We
that
are
main-
only-
That main infrastructure, even if we did that, that main water coming from that infrastructure out in the street has to be repaired and replaced.
And we're only talking Lake Michigan water. This would only be eligible if you transition from whatever system you're on to Lake Michigan water. And the one thing with Lake Michigan water, as you know, those are in good shape out there throughout the county. It's the one-off private systems, maybe a 10-person system out there. Those are the problem areas. But the Lake Michigan, this would only qualify if you're connecting to Lake Michigan water.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
thank you.
Downers Grove is putting the mains through the Downers Grove area, and Westmont is putting the mains through the Westmont area. So thank you, Member Zay. I have Member Garcia.
Yeah, thank you. I had a couple of questions in terms of, let's see, the mains going through. As far as I thought, community services gives grants for infrastructure, so I don't understand why the municipalities are not giving any kind of paperwork in for that.
I think we looked into that, and it was the income of the area, because Paula, we researched a lot of this, and the
Okay.
residents there, they're not income eligible. They're,
That's what I'm asking.
right.
Okay, so that's why that's done.
Yep,
Okay.
that's why
So
that's not.
then for my thinking is the municipalities, that's how they can get their skin in the game. They can actually replace all the piping, and then we'll allow for this for the residents to go on. I know when I was doing this, the cost of the pipes from the B-box to the house, it started like at about $9 a foot. And now I think when I left, it was almost $100 a foot. So people who did it in the past, yeah, it was a lot more, lot less costly than it is now. People cannot afford it now. I mean, they literally can't. It is above and beyond what they can do. They buy these moderate homes because that's their means, and then they get in and they cannot afford a $20,000 to $25,000 hit to try to clean up the water, but they do deserve clean water. So that's something we should definitely get. So I think that's definitely something we should do. The question I also had, and I don't know if this Nick can answer this. Will they be required to be sealing their wells? I know that's something we required because we didn't want cross contamination with the wells. I know a lot of people want to keep their wells, they could water their gardens and things like that, but then that causes perhaps a problem with the contamination.
So clearly you've been through this process before.
I
I can tell
have.
that. So of recent and the requirements are different. Municipalities might have you have to seal the well, and you still have to follow all their rules. I can tell you for unincorporated, we have developed a program in connection or in concert with the health department that people can keep their outside wells for watering. We have to prove the disconnection, no cross connection between the two for water conservation, because there is a benefit for that, but it'd be very careful how you do it. And I know the health department does regular inspections to ensure it's still in compliance.
Oh, that's good
A
to
lot
know.
of municipalities do not allow
They
keeping
don't.
the outside well.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Nick. Okay, I have Member Desart.
Thank you. I agree with many of my colleagues here. I think that we need to make sure we have the right language. We're talking about homes, not people. I know Chair Chaplin, you said that there were 500 people affected by brown water, but I think you mean 500 homes just in Downers Grove alone. So that clarification. I do want to caution us, though, that we only have $20 million left of our ARPA money, and COVID is on the rise. Just over the weekend, we had 1,697 new cases reported in DuPage County. So COVID is on the rise, but I agree with all of my other colleagues who said families deserve clean water. So here's my closing is that $1 million will help 300 homes. divided out 333.33 homes. And that is just not acceptable. There are too many more people, I believe, affected by poor water quality. And I would say either go big or go home. 1 million is not enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Desart. Member Eckhoff.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I heard somebody throw out the number of 25,000 for a tap-in fee. And I thought you were talking 3 to 5 total.
I think Member Garcia mentioned that some people have paid 25,000 to tap in. I mean, you know, if you have a huge, if you have a big lot and you have, you know, you're set
Big
far
lot,
back.
Big house,
Big- or you have-
25,000. then
No, you know what? A
can't
lot of these big lots have tiny houses on them because I live in a tiny house on a big lot. So, you know, if the house is back 60 feet back on a 123-foot deep lot or a 300 deep foot lot, or it's 200 feet back, it's going to cost you a lot to bring that infrastructure to the home. So, you know, each house is different. I think 20 years ago, I think we paid $7,000 to connect from the B box to our house, right? And we had to, you know, we paid that up front. You know, I mean, we had to do it. It's a
All right,
kid.
well, my point is that, you know, we're talking, we started at 3 to 5, now we're at 25, and I don't know how much more we're going to.
The 3 to 5 is the amount that we would pay them. It's not the amount of the connection fee.
So
So
where are they gonna come up with the other 20,000?
well, not every home, that's a one-off if it's a very deep lot, but I'm saying, you know, on an average, like Nick said, the average cost is between $5,000 to $9,000.
Is this process gonna include people who are in the middle of paying their tap-in fees?
No, it's a brand new program right now.
So you know, water's important, clean water is very important. I have been talking about sanitary charges. I think those are important too, especially if you got a field out in the back of your house that you want to tap into the sanitary district for. So we're gonna have, after this program, if it's put in, we're gonna have 3 categories of people. One group that paid the entire fee themselves, maybe through low interest loans through a government. We're gonna have people in the middle of the process. They're still paying their own and are not eligible. And then we're gonna have people who paid 0 and are eligible. And I'm not sure.
Nobody will be paying 0. So
Well, they're gonna be paying less because the government's gonna pick up part of it.
that's right.
So
Just
I
like
would-
there are small business loans and other grants that we've given
Well, I
out
heard you
through
say that,
ARPA.
but you know, the small business loans were created because the small businesses were impacted by COVID. None of this has been created by COVID. So I don't think that's a good comparison to say, oh, we gave businesses loans because of COVID, and now we're gonna give people step up for access to water, because that's not because of COVID. That's been existing for 50 years while the house has been there. So now, if you've waited to tap in until COVID came along, we got a little extra money, we'll kick it to you.
Well,
What
yeah,
I would
no-
ask staff to do, because I called about a month ago about this, when the Weed and Sanitary District reached out to me saying that they had some infrastructure projects that they would like to be considered, but I was told that the other sanitary districts also had programs that they wanted to put that out there. I would like, and I forwarded it to Nick while we're talking here, somebody to call the Weed and Sanitary District and get some information as to what capital expenses that fall on customers, they would like to improve, how many people that is gonna help, as opposed to the 300, 350 that this program is gonna help. And it seems to me that we should be looking at helping the most amount of people get the biggest bang for our buck. And we're helping 333 people, whereas I got a sanitary district that I'm sure has thousands of people that could be helped in it. And yeah, I've been told we're gonna ignore that and we're gonna consider this, and I don't think that's right. So I would ask staff to take a look at what I've sent you and get some information on that so we can compare the two.
Thank you, Member Eckhoff. And as I said, you know, we brought a conservative number forward because we wanted to feel out the committee to get their thoughts on this. So I think we have, oh, go ahead, Member DeCiani.
Yeah, what I've experienced when we started our programs, we started as a pilot, and when it took off, we started reimbursing that and more. And the more people we got on the right system, the better. And a lot of those people were seniors that couldn't afford, the full amount, et cetera. So, You could start this as a pilot,
Yeah.
see how it goes. ARPA money is a lot more flexible than CARES money. Is stormwater and water approved, which is nice. We got a lot more flexibility with these dollars. And lastly, for those that maybe have the bigger expense, maybe we can even look at expanding our PACE program. The PACE program allows for a long-term loan that would be put on the property tax bill and would transfer with the property. It's used for roofs, used for a lot of different environmental programs, and might be something to take a look at for those maybe that have a bigger expense that might need a little extra help on top of the money that we're assisting with. And this way, it's still being paid for by the homeowner at the end of the day, but allows them a lot more, longer period of time to pay that off.
Yeah, and was that PACE open up now to residential? Because I thought it was only corporations.
That's why I said we want to look at expanding the PACE
Yeah,
program.
look at expanding
Right
it,
now,
yep.
it's a commercial
Just
product.
right for commercial,
But we
right?
can maybe look at that
Yeah.
for this particular purpose.
Yeah, good thoughts, good thoughts. Thank you. Member Desart?
Thank you. I apologize if I missed this, but if we only have, we're only giving them 50% or $3,000 up to whichever is greater, right? So is this
Whichever's
only
less, right.
benefiting those who are more well-to-do than others? Like the retired person who doesn't have another $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 sitting around? They're not going to be able to tap in even if they wanted to. So I think this is just a drop in the bucket.
Right. Well, we had discussed it and, like I said, we wanted to start out conservatively as a pilot program, like Member DeCiani mentioned, see how it goes, see how it takes off. If there's interest,
But I mean, will there be a small, like Member Garcia mentioned, a zero interest loan, for example?
We
so that
don't,
they can pay the
we
rest
were
of-
talking about loans, but we have no way to get that repayment. So we can't do a loan program because I talked about a zero interest loan. We cannot do that. So because it would be too much for our staff to
No, I understand.
collect that money.
To
So,
administer, I get that, but we could work with the water companies and have.
well,
them
the
put on
water,
their
there's
bill.
no water companies. The payments go to us or the municipalities. And since this is a grant we're giving, the municipalities, aren't gonna.
Right, but I mean, once somebody does tap into like Michigan Water, they'll start getting a water bill.
Right. They will get a water bill, right? And then this $3,000 could help them with that water bill. If they get the reimbursement of the $3,000, that could help with their first couple years of their
I guess
water
my
bill.
point is, I don't only want to help those people with an extra $7K sitting in their bank account.
Well, I talked about putting an income cap on it, but again, the paperwork for that would be very hard and strenuous on staff. So we're just going to make it, first come, first serve, like we did with the small business loans. And if this program really, if it takes off, we can put more money in and hopefully help everyone, right? or the majority of people. So we wanted to start conservatively, see what the interest is. And then we can put, if we have like 30 million, I think in reserve still of ARPA money. So we can add another 2 or 3 million. And, like Member DeCiani said, then if this program takes off, then we can add in the sewer has another program of, months later, if that's what we so choose to do with our ARPA funds. But but we did try, I did talk about an income cap, but it would be too difficult. Nick, I don't know if you want to come up and explain that.
So first and foremost, with ARPA funding, you don't want to get into a program where you're loaning it out and then it's being repaid over years, because I think that would be in violation of the ARPA program. But even above and beyond that, the thought process is this program would be administered by DuPage County Public Works, if that's the will of the committee. And we really don't want to be in the business of looking at financials, tax returns, and doing that. There's obviously a lot of controls associated with that. If that is the will that everybody wants, we can work with other departments. I think community services might be the only ones who look at that, and they're pretty tapped out with their programs they have. So the thought process would treat everybody equal. If you're going to connect in, it would be 3,000 or 50%, whichever is less.
And I understand that the finance department doesn't want to administer loan programs, but the fact about people borrowing from ARPA funds just falls flat with me, because I believe back on April 26th, this board voted to take $10 million out of that fund and put it into revenue replacement, where you told us that we could use that money for anything.
Well, you're absolutely correct. If we're not using ARPA money and we're using the county money, we can do whatever program this board would like. I'm just saying if we use ARPA money, that's where you can't do the loan. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and this would be ARPA funds. So any other questions? So now I'm going to ask Member Eckhoff.
If we've got a special service area somewhere, we put that on the tax bill and they pay over time. And well, now with ARPA, why not?
That's a private connection, so that's why I believe that's
No, I'm
why
just
it's not in the
saying special service
SSA.
area for lights, for sidewalks, for whatever, you pass,
Right.
we pass an ordinance, that district or those people who are going to make use of it have a special tax put onto their property tax bill and they pay a little bit of
Well,
it each year.
and I get-
Or here's a novel thing, they sign a note on a mortgage, it gets recorded against the house until it gets paid. We've got collection for child support. I'm sure for people who don't cut their lawns, who we go and cut their lawns and lien their property. I can't believe we couldn't have a collection process on this.
Well, I think the difference between sidewalks and infrastructure is that those are common areas that everybody uses. And that's why you split it with your city and
So is the
municipality. You
water,
pay
it's just
part of the price, you
underground.
put it as a special service area. This is a private connection from the home, from the street to the home. So it's on private property. So I believe that is why a special service area cannot be done. Is that correct? I mean, for those connections, because it's on private property? Yes, that's what I understood.
So a special service area, I mean, once again, where is the funding source going? If we do this with ARPA money, or as Member Dessart said, if you do it with county money, that's something different. But typically, we've done probably 40 SSAs in Public Works. We have not included the private service lines in there. And the reason why was iterated before, everybody's private service line is different, because some people may want the private service line to go back to the back of the house, coming in the rear because their plumbing is that way. So we make everything in a street equal. And then because we can't have equality on the private service line, depending on how they have it, that's why it's a private cost. But I mean, has it been done? Absolutely, it's been done. Bensonville just did it with the White Pines area. It can be done.
Never mind then. No, I'm just saying.
And the District 1 members can talk about the White Pines project.
Well, it just sounds like we're making this up as we go along. I mean, this is the first time it's out of the box. I think there's got to be a little exploration done by staff as to how we can do it effectively. And I would like some comparison between what the sanitary districts are asking for and what these people are asking for. Because I would prefer to, as Ms. Dessart said, to give a low interest loan through the county for these people to tap in, which it sounds like it would be easier to collect back on and use the ARPA money for an organization that's going to help thousands of people instead of just hundreds.
Thank you, Member Eckhoff. Member Tornatore, and then I think we're going to wrap it up and I'm going to get a consensus here. Thank
you, Madam Chair. This is a wonderful discussion. Somebody told me a long time ago, never let the perfect get in the way of the good. We've talked about a lot of things. I think that we ought to investigate the program. I do, however, think that we need to find out how many homes would be eligible and how many homes would be interested, and that those are two different categories. And then we can better determine how much money we would need to allocate. And if it's a $3,000 gift, for lack of a better word, to get people clean water, and we've got the money to use, then I think it's a relatively simple decision.
Great. Thank you, Member Tornatore. So with that, I'm going to ask for a consensus. Does the committee feel that they want to do further research into this program with getting water out to our unincorporated areas like water? Okay, so overwhelmingly, we want to continue looking into this. And then, so I would ask, I think there's a consensus that we would like to try to get a little more better idea of how many homes might be involved and what the interest might be. So I think we can get that as well. And maybe we can bring it back in a couple of weeks or by the end of the, maybe by end of May, or middle June, something like that. So, all right, great. Well, I appreciate everyone's comments, good discussion, and I'm looking forward to see what we do with this program. So thank you. Okay, now with that, we move on to our cannabis discussion. And I would just like to make just a couple comments real quick before I bring up Jeff and our financial chief officer, Jeff, and our county auditor, Bill White, in the health department. I did invite Sheriff Mendrick, and I believe he'll be coming next or at our next meeting. And although he's not on the agenda, Bob Berlin is here, I believe, right? Oh, yeah. State's Attorney Bob Berlin is here, so he'll also be here to answer questions on the cannabis issue as well. So right now, I'm going to turn it over to our Chief Financial Officer, Jeff Martinowitz. So, or do you want to come up, Nick? Yes.
Just point of order, why is the auditor here? I mean, Member Krajewski asked for some financial information and we asked about, Member Tornatori asked about the health department implications. I don't remember anybody asking for the auditor.
Well, on April 28th, I came in and I had a long conversation with Nick, and then I went over and I talked with the auditor. And since it's the job of the auditor to look at procedures throughout the county, I asked the auditor to also do a little review of this. So he's in the process of doing the review because that really is the auditor's job. So I asked him to come in. And I think our auditor has been very fair, and he's been, he's given us a lot of reports on a lot of offices, and he has been very fair in those. So I thought that, it was important that his office come here as well. Thank you. So please go ahead, continue.
So it's up to Chair Chaplin and the Finance Committee. But on April 26th, at the last Finance Committee, there was some discussion about the cannabis sales tax and wanting to know, because we had not collected it up to that point. And there were some questions about wanting staff to do a deeper dive to give a full accounting of it. And that was accomplished in the memo that was released yesterday to Finance Committee. I can either walk through it with the Finance Committee now, or we could entertain questions. However you would like to do it, I'm open to either one.
Okay, do you want to walk through? Yeah, I read it. Okay. All right, so are you ready for questions? Okay, go ahead, Member Tornatori, then Member Krajewski.
This memo that I just got, and it's all.
Which memo from?
The memo from regarding the sales tax.
Okay, from Nick,
is it
from our staff, yeah.
Is it part of the general discussion about whether we're going to establish an ordinance, or is this going to be a discussion about the money that we don't think we got?
Well, I think it's going to be both. I think we want to address both if we can get through it.
Okay.
Member Tornatori, do you want to, maybe we can
I don't know
first.
if you want to bifurcate it. They seem to be two separate issues.
Okay, so
they're both very important.
They are.
And I think we got to focus and laser focus on one and then go to the other.
Okay, so.
But that's.
Yes, no, I agree. So with the will of the committee, do we want to take whether we want to do an opt-in ordinance first, or do we want to take our financial discussion first? Hold on, Member Tornatori, then Member Dessart.
Well, I think we're going to bifurcate it. Trying to figure out what happened to this money is an important consideration to decide whether we're going to opt in.
Yes,
so I think we got to do that first.
Okay, and that's why I have it first on the agenda. So Member Dessart.
Thank you. I just wanted to let Member Tornatori know that you said that you only got this a couple of minutes ago, but actually it came in our mail yesterday. So we've had it for more than 24 hours. Just in case you didn't happen to see your mail yesterday, it was in the mail.
Well, Member Dessart, just to let you know, I didn't even get the Finance Committee agenda until late last night. I'm not on the list. So I talked to Sally about it, and I didn't get it till about 9 o'clock last night. So I didn't get this until just now.
Well,
nor did I get the Finance Committee agenda until late last night.
Oh,
sorry, that's a different issue.
I'm not suggesting anything. I just didn't get anything. And you can ask Sally, because I sent her an email last night asking her where the Finance Committee agenda was.
My apologies. That's a totally different issue.
Okay. Thank you. So now so Jeff, do you have a presentation you want to give, or do you just want to answer questions? Or
answer questions.
Okay. And then Auditor, do you have a presentation you'd like to give?
No presentation. In addition to what was said in my memo, I just want to make 2 points. regardless of why the ordinance was not received in Springfield. There should not have been a single point of failure. There should have been procedures to catch that mistake. Mistakes happen for various reasons. Also, this is very preliminary, but what's concerning to me about this is that we may not be verifying the accuracy of revenues that come into the county from Springfield. And that's something I don't have a final answer on that yet. That is something I do want to look at to make sure that we do verify that we're receiving the correct amounts that come to the county from.
Madam Chairman,
from
I
Springfield.
have my hand up.
Okay, so thank you. Okay, so I have on my list of people that want to ask questions. Member Troy, did you still have any more questions? Or are you? Okay. I have Member Krajewski, Member Desart, Member Eckhoff, Member Kachowski. Hang on.
I just had a point of order. Before we start asking questions, couldn't we have somebody give a background for our viewing audience so they know what we're talking about?
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
Happy to. So maybe what we do, I mean, if you indulge me, I'll give you a 3-minute rundown of the memo, and that should provide the background for the viewing audience as you go through. So like I said, during April 26th, the Finance Committee, we gave a very brief presentation regarding potential lost revenue for the county related to the adult cannabis sales tax revenue. The Finance Committee at that time requested a more in-depth analysis, including the history of the issue. And so a memo was prepared yesterday, submitted to the entire county board with that history and analysis. So I'll walk through very quickly of the history, and we'll go through there in the memo, and you can follow along. So I'm just going to go through the same bullet points. June 25th to give the history of how we got to this point. June 25th, 2029, the state passed Public Act 101-0027, authorizing adult use cannabis sales in the state. August 9th, 2019, they passed an amended version of the original Cannabis Act, Public Act 101-0363. The purpose of that was they established the tax rate that counties in the state could charge. And that was set at 3 for sales in municipalities and 3.75 for unincorporated. The next pertinent date is October 22nd, 2019. And that's when this board, well, that board at that time passed County Board Ordinance 00071-19. And basically the purpose of that was they established the DuPage County retailer's tax rate for the sale of cannabis within our county, both municipal and unincorporated. The pertinent portion of that and I detail it in the memo, that original ordinance that was passed by this board should have been transmitted to Department of Revenue for the state of Illinois to alert them that we are to collect tax. And what we found out in the analysis, that was never done. Well, fast forward to December 4th, 2019, after we passed that ordinance, the state passed another Public Act 101-0593. And really the purpose of that one was to establish the collection dates for taxes. The big takeaway from that one is it rolled back the previous tax date collection of September 1, 2020 to July 1 of 2020. And that was really the purpose of that one. So now fast forward to September 28th, 2021 in Finance Committee. There was a fairly large, robust discussion regarding finances in general for the county. And the question came up, I think, from Member Krajewski, that the reported cannabis tax revenue that was being reported at that time seemed particularly low. If you recall, and what we reported in FY 2020, the county earned $51,000. And in 2021, we earned $78,000 to date. It was going up, but it wasn't going up based upon what everybody was hearing in the news. And because of that discussion and Member Krajewski bringing it up, staff agreed to look further into it. So the next 2 days, is when a lot of stuff happened. And that's when we immediately after that meeting discovered that the original ordinance that allowed for the taxation of adult use cannabis in DuPage County was never filed with Illinois Department of Revenue. Obviously, the most important thing at that point, I know CFO and myself, we wanted to get that filed. And so we immediately got that filed with the Department of Revenue that same day, September 29th. We verified it was filed. We talked to them that it was in place, and we knew that we were okay moving forward. At that point, we did alert Chair Chaplin regarding the issue, and it was decided at that point we had no idea of the impact of that, nor the full issue of it, and we wanted to get an idea of what it meant, because there was no action that could be taken at that point moving forward. The action, we had already solved the issue, and we wanted to have a full accounting of the issue and report back to Finance Committee. And then so October 1 through April 12th, that's what we did. We tried to track down what was happening, but it wasn't until April 12th that we started to get a full picture of that issue when we received our first check for adult use cannabis sales of $241,198. That allowed us to start making approximations of the potential revenue loss for DuPage County. And then on the next available finance meeting from when we received that check, we reported back to that issue to this committee, and that there was a substantial revenue loss. And after that meeting, the committee asked for a much more detailed version of what happened, how it happened, and the history. And that's where this memo was created, and the exhaustive research that was done as part of the memo. As part of that, I know the state's attorney has also talked to the clerk's office, and it was stated that the original resolution was mailed. It was put in first class and sent to the state, and apparently the state did not get it. So that was a conversation with the state's attorney and the clerk. The second part of this memo that was created was the the revenue loss calculations that we completed. There were several different methodologies we used, several different assumptions, but we feel that we gave a very good sample of what the revenue loss that DuPage County, unfortunately, that happened to us because of not filing that ordinance with the state. So we went through with some of the details, obviously detailing all of the establishments that are selling, how long they've been in operation, when the tax was collected. We did a lot of research with the state of Illinois to figure out when they would start collecting it. And it turns out it would have been, even though our ordinance said September 1, they would have started collecting July 1 of 2020. But there were 4 different methodologies utilized to determine the lost revenue. The first one was probably the simplest, which just relied upon the single check we received. It showed a total loss over that period for not filing of slightly over $3 million. Method 2, which was something that I have to credit the finance committee or finance department for finding. They tracked down some revenue numbers from the state that they issued in a report that was in a PowerPoint format. And this is an interesting one. From July 2020 to June 2021, they reported that DuPage County had a total sales of $89 million. So what that translates to, that is the hard number we know. We would have received 3% of that as part of our income. So without a doubt, the floor we're talking about is 2.6 million. They reported those numbers, and that is the entire sales for adult use cannabis in DuPage County. So the floor of our revenue loss is 2.6 million. Assuming the rest of it, the fact that we had about 18 months without filing, That one is your biggest revenues loss calculation at $4 million. And then methods 3 and 4, we utilized data from Lake County and Will County from their budgets. And it's not quite as apples to apples as what methods 1 and 2 were. And they resulted in a revenue loss of 2.3 million for DuPage County utilizing Lake County data and 2.7 million utilizing Will County data. Now, we offered 4 options for calculating revenue loss. One of them 3 million, one of them 4 million, one 2.3, one 2.7. Like I said, with method 2, your floor is 2.6. That's what we know for a fact was lost revenue, and it goes up for there. The average of those 4 is $3.04 million. And that's our job, was to report the facts, what we could substantiate, what we verified. And that's what we've been doing for the last 2 weeks as a staff, is we've verified every fact in here so that we gave you a full accounting of it. And at that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Hold on a second. So just a couple comments on that report. So I just want to make it clear that in December, I sent an email asking, if this was going to be ready for a January meeting. I didn't get a response. February, I sent an email questioning the amount of the sales tax being only $300,000 after reading, 100 million from the state, 1.8 million from Will County. I copied, Member Tornatori was on that too. I said, please go back, double check the numbers. Sam, you replied, good to double check, right? So I had been checking on these numbers as well. We were trying to get a grasp on this. But I'm going to start out with some questions. Did we know at the beginning that we were supposed to get 2 separate taxes?
Going
Yeah.
back to when the ordinance was originally filed. in
Right. So back in
2019.
2019, when we did this, Paul Rafek was the CFO, and he explained to the committee that we would be getting 2 separate taxes. One was a lower amount and one was a higher amount. Did we not recognize that we weren't getting those 2 separate
Well,
taxes, or how was that missed?
Yeah, keep in mind that this is a new revenue stream from the state, never received by any county, any municipality up to this point. We had no idea how the revenue stream would be, sent to us. Was it going to be part of this? Is it part of 1 check, 2 checks? We had no idea how it was going to be. And obviously, as these stores are opening, one, and then 4 or 5 months later, another one, we don't know what the delay is. And with the new revenue stream, we have no benchmark data to figure out. So we absolutely were aware of 2 different revenue streams, but we didn't realize, is that 1 check, 2 checks? Is it part of sales tax data coming in? There's no way to have, obviously, as once you have benchmarks for a revenue stream, it's very easy to say something's wrong with that. Something is not right. And we didn't have that benchmark data and to be able to see, is there a problem?
Okay, so in 2021, when we were doing our budget, we found out about this late September. So we passed the budget out of finance, I think October 12th, and then we passed it in committee and board at the end of November. But we never adjusted the budget knowing that we were going to be getting an increase in the sales tax from the cannabis, right?
Yeah.
Did we ever was the chairman ever notified of this?
The chairman was notified, I think, early this year. I don't know where the chairman is, early this year about the issue, once we started understanding the gravity and how big it is.
So that was missing in the memo that you notified the chairman. So that was not in there. So, all right. So, but why didn't we adjust the budget in 2021 saying that we were going to get a little higher?
Once again, we had no idea what the size or the scope of the increase until we started figuring out what does it mean 100,000 more or 10 million more? We don't know. And until we have a revenue stream to base it off of, we don't know what that would be.
Okay, so we left the budget the same. So then when looking at our revenues coming in, we wouldn't really know to be looking for a higher revenue because we left it kind of lower, correct? So
I mean, if you're talking September of 2021, I mean, we were definitely thinking that we're going to have more revenue in 2022, but there's no way to know what that level was until we received the first check at the beginning of April.
Okay, so, but we didn't make any adjustments to the budget for that, even a slight increase in the revenues. Let me think what else I have here. So also in the memo, it talked about the RTA tax and all the other taxes coming in. How do we verify, you know, so we saw that these huge increases were coming in. Did we look to see why we were getting so much more revenue for the RTA tax and everything? What did the finance department staff, you know, did you look into why we're getting so much more?
And keep in mind, during this, you had the pandemic going on. So you had some revenue streams were decreasing drastically. Some were, increasing drastically, and everything was upside down when it came to revenue going in and out of, coming into the county. So from our standpoint, I mean, we had a revenue stream for cannabis that went up almost, I think, 100% from one year to the next, and it was still 4 months left of the year to report. And so unfortunately, without a benchmark data, we didn't know what to expect. So then if member Krajewski didn't ask the questions in the committee, how would we have found this? Well, I mean, him asking those questions caused us to dig deeper, and it was a very good thing, because if we hadn't dug deeper, 2 days later, we would have missed the next deadline for filing this, and it would have been 6 more months for collection. Okay, all right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate answering those questions, because those were just some of mine. Okay, so I'm going to open it up to the committee. Hang on, I think I had a list of names, but I can take them again. So I see member Krajewski, Tornatori, Pachowski, Zay, Hart, Garcia. Okay, so Krajewski, Tornatori, Pachowski, Hart, Zay, and Garcia. Okay, go ahead, member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And let's make no mistake about it. It was the clerk's job to file this with Springfield. That did not happen. And that has cost this county and the taxpayers and us $3 to $4 million. Okay. And honestly, I have a number of questions, but it should be the clerk that's up here to ask those questions. And whether it was member Chaplin as the chair and Jeff, you guys, by putting that on the agenda September 26th, I want to compliment Jeff and your staff, because when I raised that issue about those numbers being so low, I saw the stuff from Nicole. The next day, you called Springfield and found out, asking why the taxes numbers are low. And they said, well, we don't even have the ordinance for the sales tax. We're only collecting the use tax. And in the back and forth emails, Nick said 2 days, but they said, make sure it's postmarked and it gets down here by October 1st. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to start collecting the tax till July of this year. And we'd have missed another 6 months. So at least to you guys getting that on the agenda to at least show us the numbers and questions being asked, we were able to at least get it done down there. So we collected in April our January sales tax, whatever you said, 241,000. So we would have potentially missed another 8 or 6 months. We wouldn't be able to start this till July 1st. So again, I want to thank you guys at least for getting it on there. And I saw that kind of correspondence with somebody's memo here with Chris Schneider calling down to make sure that the person got it, and then for the MFT tax. And then, I got in some of these memos, I think maybe Berlin, our state's attorney who looked at it, somebody else wrote there, that the clerk's office said they'd throw it in the regular mail unless the county board tells her to do her job differently. I mean, it's not my job, it's not the county board's job to tell the clerk how to do their job, to tell the coroner when to do an autopsy, to tell state's attorney Berlin when to charge somebody. That's the clerk's job to file that with Springfield. Okay, so let's figure out what happened. We need, I can't imagine you don't do a cover letter, you don't call down to the state, find out how to file it. Okay, so Nick, you and I had a conversation as you were putting this memo together. I go, you talk to the old clerk. Well, how'd that happen? And he says, I covered all my bases. Well, yeah, so I did. I'm calling everybody too. I talked to the old clerk. Heidi, the person who was just manager, would call to Springfield, make sure where it's supposed to go. How do you want it? FedEx, you want it there? Follow up to make sure they got it. Okay, I know you didn't put it in a memo, but I know you followed up and asked those same questions and got the same answer I got. They followed up just like Chris did in somebody's memo here to make sure the person got it. It's important. The importance of getting that document down there to make sure we start collecting the sales tax. So, and I was kind of disappointed. Nobody told me September when you guys found out. We were hearing municipalities getting presentations from cannabis companies saying we're going to generate 400,000, 300,000 for your community. We get the same 3%. So when we saw those numbers, it's like, there's 10 of them in DuPage. How can we only be getting $71,000? But again, I appreciate you guys jumping on it. So then trying to figure out, okay, how did this happen? So I know, Bill, you gave us a memo here. I know it's just a memo, and so it wasn't like a preliminary audit where you maybe used audit procedures, but there's 3 opinions here, but I don't see any data on how you came up with the opinions, which was the least likely one. But maybe you could inform us, because I'd like to hear what you did, what audit testing procedures you did to be able to come up with 3 opinions of most likely, least likely. I mean, I got no data there. And, you did talk about internal control. This happened in September. So maybe the first thing I'll start with is, did you look at their new internal control policies? I assume they have some written policies now since this thing was identified 6 months ago. Again, the clerk should be up here telling us that, but
Well, first, I've only been working on this for about a week or 10 days. We have not run audit procedure on this. The memo is based on the assumption that the only fact we have is that the document was not received by the correct department in Springfield. That's the only fact we have to work from. And it's simply a matter of opinion why it was not received. The clerk mails out hundreds, a great many documents. So why was this one missed when the other ones weren't? Perhaps they did. I don't know why it was not received in Springfield.
But your least likely opinion was that it was not mailed. And so what determinations,
Because what we did investigate is there are dozens of addresses for Illinois Department of Revenue. If you go to Google and Google address Illinois Department of Revenue, they have multiple offices. They have multiple offices in Springfield. They have dozens, if not hundreds, of post office boxes.
Did you see the cover letter they sent?
Well, I didn't. Okay, that's whether it should have been a cover letter or not is a different question. That's an internal control question. Okay. But the point I want to emphasize most of all is it doesn't matter. It should not have depended upon a single letter for this ordinance to be implemented. There should have been countywide procedures to follow up on this.
It's not, that's the clerk's job to file.
This is a preliminary opinion.
I understand it's preliminary, it's your own opinion. But so did you look at the procedures now that the clerk has in place as part of this? Because it was 6 months ago that this was identified. So evidently the clerk, the state's
I've only worked
attorney.
on this for a week.
Well, I understand. I know you've been, but all you had to do is walk down. I asked you, did you go see their internal procedures? They have to have them now because the clerk's office knew about this 6 months ago, that there was they didn't mail it. They did, or they mailed it and it never showed up. But they have no written letter of where it went.
I have no conclusions about that yet.
Well, understand. I'm asking you, did you see their procedures? Do they have written procedures? Did you go, you've been 10 days.
I've not looked at their written procedures yet. No.
Do they have them?
I do not know yet.
But you just said you've been on 10 days. That's the first thing as an auditor, you want to see their internal, for internal control. So you didn't ask them?
To look at before we can write a final audit report.
I know, I didn't want to find one. I'm just asking, have you seen their procedures? If the clerk was here, I'd ask them if they got their procedures now. I mean, this was 6 months ago. Do they have written ones? Do they have them before? If they didn't, they should at least have them now. We got to make sure these things don't happen again. It's not our job. It's the clerk's job.
I don't have the information to answer that question.
Okay, so did you ask for it?
That will be, I'm not going to itemize the detailed parts of what the full audit program is going to be until it's completed.
So basically you didn't do anything yet. You just started it, but we got a memo.
Characterization, but that's okay.
Well, I mean, okay, I'm just trying to find out. And like I said, the clerk was here and I asked him, but there should be written procedures first. If there's no written procedures, we want to make sure we have written procedures. And, it should be make sure you put a cover letter to going down to Springfield. As the old clerk used to do, they would call and ask, as Chris Schneider did, as Jeff and Nicole just did. They found the person, they asked how to get it down there, and get it FedEx. There's multiple ways to mail stuff.
But what I said in the memo is how we intend to go forward. I don't plan on relying on what people tell me they did. I'm going to be looking for documentation of prior instances where things were sent to Springfield for the IDOR. We will go and find the methods used by the prior clerk in sending things down. I'm less interested in what they tell me they did. I'm more interested in finding the documents that were filed back in the day. And just to explain the complexity here, there's an issue which is currently pending, unrelated to this, that we do not have a convenient method of searching our resolutions. And I'm working with IT about that right now. Okay. What I would like to be able to do is quickly find all of the ordinances in the last 10 years that change, and that way I can get the paperwork. Our data system doesn't let me pull that out easily. Finding all the prior changes, where we modified sales tax, is hard to do. I don't care what people tell me. I want to see the paperwork, and then I'll give an opinion.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to that. And I would ask them for if they had procedures in place before this happened, and then if they didn't, I would at least look at their new procedures that I'm sure they should have in place now. It's 6 months ago.
The first point,
I don't have any more questions, Bill, for you.
Well, the first point in my memo about going forward is to go and find all of the instances where we changed our sales tax rate and what documentation was done in those cases. And until I see that documentation, I cannot have an opinion. Thank you.
Okay, well, we got an opinion here, I guess, but all right, thank you. But again, I think we need the clerk here, because I think we got to make sure this doesn't happen again. This costs this county millions of dollars. I mean, there's people, there's all kinds of uses for this money, but at least going forward, we're going to be collecting this tax. But I really think, we should have the clerk in front of us here to find out what happened and to make sure this doesn't happen again. This is a very large mistake for this county to miss out on $4 million, and potentially we almost lost another $2 million. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Member Krajewski. Member Tornatori.
Chair Chaplin, can I switch with Mike? Can I switch? Member Pachowski's got to make a phone call.
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead, Member Pachowski.
Nick, you said that when you found out it was never filed with the Illinois Department of Revenue, it was immediately filed. How was that filed? Was it filed by regular mail? Was this filed by certified mail, Federal Express, or personally delivered? How was that filed when we found out?
The Department of Finance, they called down the Department of Revenue, talked to an individual, verified through email, sent it FedEx, and then verified on the back end.
So it was sent by Federal Express, correct? Yes. Okay. My other question is that the auditor's letter was concerned because there's 3 or 4 different hypotheticals as far as it's done. So do we have anybody in that office? Do we have any cause of action? Maybe it's for the state's attorney. Can we file a claim in the Court of Claims? Can we bring a mandamus action? If I have somebody in the clerk's office that's willing to swear that they put a stamp on it and somebody mailed it, does that do us anything, or does it has to be received? Because I admit with what the auditor, mistakes were made here. And I don't know if it was filed one way or second or third way, which was troubling to me because we should have a policy and procedure. But if someone, and I don't know if it was sent or not, but doesn't somebody know whether it was done? Because that's not in the letter. We assumed on those scenarios that something was mailed. Then can't we do something with the Court of Claims or a mandamus action, or it has to be received, and that's where we get blown out of the water?
At this point in time, Member Pachowski, we don't have any evidence. We don't have anyone that can say that it was sent, other than when I asked the question, all that I was told was that simply it was mailed, registered mail. There's no copies. There's no transmittal emails. There's no one that can verify that in fact it was sent. So without that, I'm a little hard pressed to look to the state.
Thank you, Member Pachowski. Member Tornatori.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as I kind of categorize this, and first, Liz, you and I have talked about the general cannabis discussion for a while, and I will acknowledge that we both came up with the fact that we thought the numbers were lower than they should have been. And I'm glad to see the auditor here because I think this is something that the auditor is, that's why we have that office. The fact is we lost somewhere between 2.6 million and $4 million. And based on what I read in the memo, the state's attorney has told us that we can't recoup that money. And apparently the reason is because that's the state statute. And we lost that money because it appears to be uncontroverted facts that Springfield did not get the ordinance as they should have. And what's troubling to me is that, again, the ordinance wasn't mailed, certified or registered mail, wasn't sent FedEx. But more troubling to me is that there's not even a copy of the letter or that went to Springfield with first-class mail. There wasn't even a file open. Every time I talk to a client, I open a file that says I talked to that client on that day, so that if that client decides to sue me 2 years later, I know that I talked to him or her on that day. There wasn't even a file open. Quite frankly, I don't care if the clerk comes up. To me, it's not Gene Kazmarek who was supposed to send this to Springfield. I'd like to know who was responsible in the clerk's office to have done this and why it wasn't done, or why we don't have a record of the fact that it was done. The fact that the auditor says that there are dozens of departments in Springfield, and it's most likely, I guess, that this was sent to the wrong place, is even more of a reason why we should have had a copy, or it should have been sent FedEx and not sent first-class mail, like you're sending a Christmas card to Uncle Charlie. We're talking about $2.6 million here that someone is now telling us from the clerk's office they put in an envelope and put in the mailbox to send to Springfield on the hopes that the US mail was going to get it there. Now we're hearing they did that, but it didn't get there. This is the dog ate my homework excuse, okay? It borders, if not on incompetency or malfeasance, just plain old incompetence. The suggestion here that this was done without any kind of backstop, without any kind of copy, any kind of file, even if it was just put in an envelope first class, is just beyond anything I can possibly imagine from an elected official dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars over the course of time, particularly with this issue. Yes, mistakes were made because this was a new source of revenue, but I hope that the auditor does go back. Well, I hope you do go back, and I trust that you will, and find out what past procedures were. Because if our past procedures, and let's take the last 3 years, were that important documents were sent first class to Springfield or anywhere else, and there was no copy of any of those mailings and no files open, then that is malfeasance, because that's ridiculous. If your investigation determines that they have established in that department that there have been files open and copies of letters, then that to me is an indication that this ordinance never got sent to Springfield. So one way or the other, your determination, I think, is going to cast a light that this either wasn't sent to Springfield or somebody has just totally screwed this up from the get-go. And I'd like to know whose responsibility it was. I'd like to know somebody, yeah, it's ultimately the clerk's responsibility, but somebody had to put that envelope in the mail. I don't know who that is. To this day, we don't know. And I'm not looking to hang anybody out to dry here, although it may certainly sound like it, but I'm not. The reality here is that we need to know who did this. If someone's going to tell me this got mailed, then who mailed it? So I'm beside myself that this went on. And we're getting the dog ate my homework excuse from the clerk's office, because as I read the memo somewhere, I think it was Deputy Clerk Johnson said, unless they're directed otherwise, everything is sent just first-class mail. You got a $2.6 million revenue source, multi-million-dollar revenue source from cannabis tax, and you put it in an envelope instead of first-class mail, and you don't have a copy, you don't have a file, you don't have anybody who timestamps it, who does anything to verify that this is done, boggles my mind. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member Tornatore. I have Member Hart, then Member Zay, then Member Garcia, Member DeCiani, and Member Desart. So Member Hart, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair Chaplin. I couldn't agree more with everything my colleague Member Tornatore just said. This is the clerk's responsibility. The buck stops with her. And because of what appears to be an egregious mistake, this county is out nearly $3 million, if not more. And that's something we need to get to the bottom of. I fully support reviewing previous processes that were used. I find it very, very difficult to believe that first-class mail was the gold standard and how we got these documents to Springfield whenever we were dealing with anything related to revenue. We need to get to the bottom of that. I don't know if Paul Hines is on the line, the previous clerk, he might be able to shed some light on previous processes, but we need to get that information. And I'd be interested to hearing if, former clerk and Deputy Treasurer Hines could add some light into that. But one other question I do have is, this committee is just discussing this now. And Chair Chaplin, you knew about this incident over 8 months ago. Why are we just having this discussion in this committee? Why is this the first time you thought this was necessary to bring up?
Well, I have my email chains from staff, but I was told, I don't even know the day, that the clerk did not send the ordinance to Springfield.
You were told that how many months ago?
I don't know. I don't know when I was told. I do have the date when I was in your office, because I don't know the date when I was in the office. I don't even know if it was in the office, but I was told, but there was no memo. There was nothing in writing to me. It was a very brief conversation from what I remember.
And because of that, I had to ask 2 weeks ago to have this laid out.
Well, here's what I did do though. I did follow up. I mean, I asked in December, I asked the question, are we ready to move forward with bringing this to the Finance Committee? Jeff Martinowitz said, I'll check with Nick, right? Then I didn't get an answer. Then, as I said, I was reading articles about the sales tax. Now, obviously it was not expressed to me that, that the sales tax it wasn't conveyed to me how much money was lost, because I had been asking, let's get these numbers, let's move forward. I want to bring this forward. And I guess staff said that we'll bring it forward when we have the numbers. Now, they got the check on February 12th or April 12th, you said. I never got an email. I never got a call that they got the check. I was told that you got the check. And then it was never explained to me the amount of the significance of the damage that was done until it was asked on this committee floor.
But in the meantime, there were a number of conversations taking place behind the confines of this meeting
well,
that we should have been aware of, in my view.
Well,
And
I can
that's the
share,
truth.
yes, and I
So-
can share the emails with you that I sent to staff, because I was asking them, are we ready to bring this forward? Are we ready to bring this forward? Now, I also understand that the chairman was advised of this earlier this year.
Well, I understand that there's.
And
a
there was
desire to
never,
go
I
that
don't know
route.
what that conversation
What this
was
does
either.
show to me is that there was gross incompetence at some level, and it may not only be in the clerk's office. I think that this is something that we should have been notified, and ultimately the buck stops with you on that. I look forward to getting the information about the process, because I think this is something that frankly, the whole community needs to know. And I would ask that these memos that were sent to us yesterday be included in the meeting minutes from this meeting.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, Nick, if you want to answer, but.
Specific question, what,
No, I was more making a comment. I would love to see the processes that were used in previous administrations on this. And I think just in general, I think this board, this committee should have been notified earlier, and that is at the direction of who sets the agenda, which is the chair. Thank you.
I mean, I will make the comment that Chair Chaplin did ask for updates regularly about where the revenue is. I do want to make that point.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Hart. Member Zay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I'm troubled when he says there's a breakdown of policies, procedures, the auditor said, and it kind of tried to indict everybody in the county on everything that we're doing. And I want to be specific. It says here in the ordinance that copies of this ordinance shall be certified by the clerk and sent to the Illinois Department of Revenue prior to October 30th, 2019. That's pretty specific. There's no breakdown of procedures, nothing else. And it scares me even more when it says, well, if you go into Google and Google Illinois Department of Revenue, there's multiple addresses. Well, wouldn't somebody pick up a phone and call the Illinois Department of Revenue and say, hey, we're Googling your name. Which one are we doing? We've got a new revenue source. Where should we send this? Anybody in business, myself, any lawyer, any accountant, anytime you send anything to the state of Illinois or the federal government, you get some kind of verification. You make a copy. You buy one of those little things at the thing that says faxed, and you write the little date in, or you do something else. You make a copy. You do something. It concerns me more that our state's attorney asked for any documentation on this, a cover letter, who mailed it, who did anything else. Did you weigh it? Did you do anything else? Did you take it to the post office? Because guess what? When I send stuff, I take it to the post office. I get it put on a scale. They weigh it if I don't send it certified. And you know what they give me? They gave me a receipt and the date it was sent and how much it costs. So do we have any of that from the clerk's office? I mean, how do we not have a cover letter? We just stick this thing in an envelope and mail it to who knows who, and nobody follows up at any point? I mean, that's ridiculous. And I agree with Member Hart. Why did we not know about this? And I know I've been here for a while. I've always asked time and time again, how are we doing on our OTB revenues? How are we doing on when cannabis sales first started? We've asked, what's going on with cannabis? This is way before September. We've always asked this board, how are we doing? And to say because we didn't change our budget, this board has always been very conservative on new revenue sources when it comes to it. When we got the RTA tax, we were conservative because we didn't know what we were going to get in. And same thing with cannabis. Just try to indict our staff and say, well, we didn't know, and so we didn't make any changes. It's kind of ridiculous, because I think we'd rather be surprised by more revenue than budget 2 more in the past than we did, and all of a sudden we have a shortfall, have to make up for it. But again, I find it interesting that the audit or the clerk is not here. This is her role to do. I mean, I request for her to come in at the next meeting, the next county board meeting, and give us what happened, who mailed it, who's responsible for it, just like Member Krajewski said, just like Member Tornatori said, just like Member Hart said. Come and explain to us what happened here, because we're not talking about a little bit of money here. We're talking about a lot of money, and a lot of money. And this clerk has had no problem coming to this board and asking us for money for voting machines and everything else. You know what? That's like half of the voting machines that we paid for. So this is a huge revenue loss for the county. There needs to be more explanation of why, and a breakdown of policy and procedures. Why do we have to tell somebody? That's not our job to tell somebody how to do their job. They're a countywide elected official. There needs to be some responsibility on their part. We need to get some answers to the questions here today. And I would hope that somebody would actually show up to the meeting and give us that, because it's clear in our ordinance that it's the clerk's responsibility to mail this. And we need to know what happened and why the state didn't get it. And why the state didn't get it, guess what? When you get audited or you get something else, you know, the state will send you a notice and say, oh, we didn't get it. And you come back with some documentation, say, well, we mailed it on this day and did this and did that. You know what the state will say? You're right, send us that documentation and you're fine. Well, we don't have any documentation to send it to them. So we need to know that and get answers to what's going on, because again, this isn't some small thing. I mean, you're talking between 2.6 and $4 million that our taxpayers lost. So again, I think we need some answers from the persons whose responsibility this was. Thank you.
Thank you, members. And just to be clear, that the tax was not collected. So it's sitting in our taxpayers' pockets, I guess, but it's not like there's like revenue. It's not like there was revenue collected that the state is holding. So, I mean, it just wasn't collected,
But
which is, I know, I agree. I'm just saying it was right.
Everybody saw the.
No, I know.
Saw the state made $33 million this month. The state made this, the state made that. If you remember, this was a heated discussion on this board floor about even doing the tax at that point. It wasn't unanimous. It was about putting it in unincorporated areas, then it was about taking the 3%. So it wasn't something that wasn't not well thought out by our board, and a lot of thought was put into it. So again, that is lost revenue because
Well, yeah.
we said we wanted it, we wanted the 3%, we wanted to do that.
Yes, no, I'm just saying, you're right, it was lost revenue, but I'm saying it was right because it was never collected. So it's not like the state's holding it and they're not giving to us. There's just nothing for them to give us. So thank you. So I have Member Garcia, Member DeCiani, Member Desart, Member Schwarzy, and Member Tornatori. So Member Garcia, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Chaplin. I'm going to kind of lower the heated rhetoric here. I am talking as somebody who used to be the ones who mailed out the letters. And I can tell you that quite honestly, staff, when we mailed out letters, didn't always have the ESP that they thought we did, that we needed to make copies and have certified and all that stuff. We needed direction, and that kind of comes from the top. And unfortunately, it does come from the county board level on down. So here's what we passed. Here's what we need done. I'm looking at Exhibit E underneath Bill White's thing, and it does say from, let me grab it here, from the IDOR, that you're supposed to check with them before the deadline to make sure they received it. That's a finance direction, I think. And I know at this point in time, I'm not blaming you, Jeff. I think Paul was in the point of transferring out. We had somebody changing there. I think Nick was in the process of taking over this job. There was a lot of changes, this before my time, but I absolutely know when there is changes going on in the staff leadership, sometimes things do go awry. And it's not one person's fault. It's not one department's fault. It's the manner in which they do that. So I'm really looking forward to the auditor looking through the way things are being done and cleaning them up and making sure we have a clear path from now on exactly how we're going to be doing that. Because if you don't have that, the staff that's doing all the work, because they aren't sitting there waiting to do one letter to do it correctly. They are also helping customers as they come in. They are helping people get married down there in the clerk's office. They are helping. This is a full-time job and they're busy all the time. So I'm going to stick up for the staff, which is hardworking. And I'm not saying that this isn't a tragedy, that this money that we were hoping we would get, we did not come at this point in time. But all we can do is improve it from now on and stop blaming the staff and start getting the procedures in place, from memos being sent out on a daily basis after board meetings. This tells people in all the departments what they need to be doing exactly, and giving them all of the directions. And if we can do that, I think all of this will stop and we will be done. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Member Garcia. Member DeCiani?
Thank you, Madam Chaplain. Experience matters. And when we have a brand new sales tax, something we've never had before, you need to have belts and suspenders put on that resolution, that ordinance. That there should have been a phone call down to Springfield. Hey, we just passed this ordinance. It's for marijuana. What's the process? Okay, yeah, a cover letter. The ordinance goes down, certified mail at a minimum, so we get a signature. And if not, at FedEx. And then a follow-up that they did receive it. You know, I've been harping on our clerk for quite a while, who is one of the highest paid employees, elected officials that we have here at the county. She's virtually unattended our current board meetings unless she needs money or something. And whether it was one of her employees that made an error, at the end of the day, the buck stops with her. Again, experience matters. I also, if I was chairman of this county board, would have been overseeing that as well too. So part of the blame I would also put on our chairman, who seems to have checked off for the last 2 years. And, you know, at the end of the day, you know, both executives are responsible for this. This is a huge tax. It's $3 to $4 million in lost revenue, but 99% is the clerk. But if I was chairman, I would have been looking over her shoulder to make sure that was in the pocket of the Department of Revenue and in the pockets of the taxpayers, which, again, $3 to $4 million is a lot of money. This county board passed a resolution, gave her the authority to send it down to Springfield. We don't need to babysit her. It's her office. It's not a department. If she was the clerk unelected, be a different situation. Experience matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Member DeCiani. Member Desart?
Thank you. I share the outrage over the lost revenue as my colleagues do. But I think that the outrage is misplaced. Finance Chair Chaplin was the whistleblower on this. So I commend her instead of demonize her. Thank you so much for being the whistleblower and to figure out all of these other Collier counties are getting all this cannabis tax money. Where's DuPage's cut? So thank you so much. And
that was Member Krajewski.
Member Krajewski as well. Yes, absolutely.
I mean, a lot of us ask questions. I mean, a lot of us ask the questions.
But what I want to say is a copy of this ordinance that was approved on October 22, 2019 says copies of this ordinance shall be certified by the clerk, and we see that they were, and sent to the Illinois Department of Revenue, and we see that it was. But and one of the documents says tips for all ordinances, and this is Exhibit E from the Illinois State Revenue Department. It says there are templates for ordinances on our website. Legal will send a letter stating that an ordinance will be imposed or requesting changes to the ordinance. If you want to verify that we received your ordinance, please check with us before the deadline. And reflecting or echoing what Member Garcia said, this was up to finance to call and make sure. It says right here on their website, the Illinois Revenue website, it says, if you want to verify that we received your ordinance, please check with us before the deadline, because the clerk's job and function is not to receive taxes. So there's no way that department would know if taxes were received or not received or enough were received. But again, reflecting Member Garcia, that was a huge transitional time. Member Rafek was leaving. I'm sorry, Paul Rafek was leaving and Jeff was just coming in. So there was that transition. So I could see how lines got crossed and things may not have been accomplished. Nick Hotmeyer was moving around in his position. And so I believe the fault lies in finance and the finance department, but there's no one to blame because it was a transitional period. And then just shortly after that, remember how naive we were back in October of 2019? We hadn't heard of COVID. We hadn't heard of social distancing. We hadn't heard of lockdowns. Everything was done properly by the clerk's office. I fault the finance department, but nobody in particular because of all of the transition going on at the time. But I think moving forward to solve conversations like this or issues like this, challenges like this, we make it policy to send all ordinances by FedEx, all ordinances. I mean, we vote on these ordinances every single meeting. So there are thousands, literally thousands that have to go to Springfield every year. So is it now a policy? We should make it a policy, in fact, to have everything go through FedEx. Thank you.
Nick, did you want to go ahead and make some comments?
The only thing I want to say, saying the fault of the finance department, I mean, I've purposely in my memo, I haven't said fault or not fault for anybody, but I do take exception to that because finance department, in my opinion, has performed extraordinarily well. There was only, I mean, in my opinion, the only official that could have sent this is the clerk. They are the only ones that can attest and
yeah, I'm not talking about who sent it, Nick. I'm talking about the follow-up. It says, if you want to verify that we received your ordinance, please check with us before the deadline. So who does that follow-up?
The follow-up, I mean, that's another discussion, but I can tell you from sending it, it has to come from the clerk. There's no other option.
I understand that, but who does that follow-up that's here right on their website in Exhibit E? Well, the sender doesn't receive taxes. They would never know that the taxes were not being received. So Nick, my question is, if you want to verify that we received your ordinance, please check with us before the deadline. Typically, with every other ordinance that we send, who does that? Who follows up? And if you can't answer that question, maybe that's the problem.
As far as who follows up that they send it, I can tell you, and that might be a question for Paul Hines, to be honest with you, because he did it before, but I know that, from when finance sent it out to Department of Revenue in September, they called down there, they sent it, they verified they got it. They did it all in one fell swoop. So maybe Paul has a comment on that.
I just want to make an announcement that I did talk with Chairman Cronin and he did that we are going to go longer today to get this resolved because I think it's really important. I think we need to get this solved today. So Member Krajewski, I see your hand up, but I have Member Schwarzy, Member Tornatore, Member Eckhoff, Member Renahan before. Is it something that you want to get in right away or?
Nick's talked to Paul. I talked to Paul. Okay, the clerk, Heidi, who is in a position there, is the one that would call down to Springfield, ask how they wanted it, registered mail, FedEx, and then would follow up to make sure they received it. That's the job of the person. The clerk's office is supposed to get it down there.
Your mic,
That's-
please, Bill. Okay, hold
I'm
on.
not asking, not talking to Bill.
No. Okay.
And that's the job of the clerk to make sure it gets down there. And they can follow up with, remember, the SART's website to make sure they got it. But they would specifically follow up to find out what happened. So, I mean, remember Hart reference, and Nick said Paul will be on the line. So if you're on there, Paul, tell us how you used to do it.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Hang on. Let me let Bill answer it.
I don't have a question for Bill.
But Bill has something that I think he
He's
thinks is
telling me he hasn't
pertinent.
done anything.
Bill,
No,
good.
my point is, the point I want to make is that what somebody says they did does not matter. It's what the documents show. And until we have those documents, we really can't resolve this.
Your opinion's based on somebody telling you that it was put in the post office.
It's premature to come to conclusions without seeing the documents.
Okay, thank you. So I have member Schwarzy next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, from what I've been hearing, the ordinance was sent. Why wasn't it received? Who knows? I mean, we've discussed a lot of reasons why. Certainly the mail has been very unreliable and in disarray for the last few years. With regards to why the finance department didn't catch it earlier, Nick stated that there was no benchmark data, so you didn't know. So, it was a huge, expensive mistake. What's our options at this point? We can't recoup the money. So really our options are to move forward, create ordinances, checks and balances, whatever we need to do to move forward so this doesn't happen again.
Thank you, member Schwarzy. And that's why I thought it was important to have the auditor's office step in. I have all the confidence that they're going to do a thorough review and come back to this committee with very good recommendations for us moving forward. So member Tornatori.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The finger pointing is this is becoming the theater of the absurd. We're blaming the chairman. We're blaming the finance department. We're suggesting that the person who sent the mail isn't the person who should have followed up to see whether or not Springfield should have received it. We're suggesting that the post office is unreliable, yet there was no attempt to do anything other than put this in an envelope and put it in the mailbox. I think Liz, I've never disparaged the clerk. I'm not disparaging you. I continue. I'm not about disparaging, but the suggestion that everything is our fault, whether it's we didn't do the precinct maps because the clerk had it, it gave it to us at what I still consider the last minute, or it's our fault because the clerk rearranged the RFP because, quite frankly, the election commission wasn't happy with who came in first on that RFP for the voting machines. And now we're suggesting that everything the clerk mails out is our problem because it starts at the top. My suggestion that the top there is the clerk. The clerk is the top of the clerk's office. If there's a problem within the clerk, you don't go to us, you go to the clerk. And I had a question for Nick. You said earlier that when you became aware of this problem, that we then quickly put together what you needed to do to file with Springfield, correct?
That was our primary, once we found out it wasn't filed.
And you did it within, and you were like 2 days short of the deadline.
Yeah, it was within 24 hours we got it filed.
My question is, who's we?
We is myself
Who's we?
and finance, Jeff and I.
Okay, so even after all of this, it was still you in finance that did what you were supposed to do, which was otherwise the clerk's responsibility.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm
And,
done.
and member Tornatori, I agree with you. I think any type of blame or fault right now, I mean, let's wait. That's right. Accountability. That's right. Accountability. And you know what? And I think as soon as we get the report from the auditor, that's going to give us a very good picture of what exactly happened.
The auditor doesn't come to the same conclusion based on no
based on no information or 2 days worth of information.
No,
And the conclusion that the auditor came up with was the most likely scenario that the clerk had no fault.
right. No, I think we will.
That to me is not an independent.
No, I think we will have a very good
Let's bring
review from the
Baker
clerk.
Tilly in and have them do an outside firm, bring an outside firm in and have a audit done. Baker Tilly can do that.
That's, I mean, if Baker Tilly, I mean,
I just want to make one comment. I did not conclude, the conclusion was the most likely scenario was that it was sent to an address that wasn't the appropriate address in Springfield. It doesn't say anything about fault or responsibility. No, it's just there's three. Well, then all three are equally possible. All three are equally possible. Well, but okay. Moving forward with the audit, the goal will be to look at prior instances of when they were obtained, and I need to see the paperwork. Unfortunately, getting that paperwork is not that easy because the records aren't organized.
yes, and I think we give our auditor a chance. You know, we could call for a special state's attorney on a lot of instances, but we've not done that. You know, I mean, the auditor has been fair. He's given us reports on the clerk's office before. So I have every confidence in him that he will give us a fair and honest and a good report with suggestions on how to shore up our policies at all levels. So Member Eckhoff.
Somehow suggested that this county board should set procedure for 9 other countywide elected officials, including the clerk's office. And I think that is one, not workable, not something we've ever done, and something that would be resisted by those other offices. I'm sure Bob Berlin doesn't want us coming in and telling him how to run his office. And we're uniquely unqualified to do so. And I think that would be the same with the clerk's office. They should know how to run their office. We've never been in there. We've never done it. So, and likewise with the chairman, I don't know how any blame could be put on our chairman for this any more than any individual blame would be put on any one of us. So I think each countywide elected officials got to stand on their own. I'm sure we're going to get another report. I look forward to it because I enjoy these 3-hour meetings, and hopefully we'll get to the bottom of it later.
Thank you, Member Eckhoff. Member Renahan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No doubt we're all concerned as something's gone astray here. But I do think there's blame to share. I think a great example of how to do this is what Chris Schneider did to get the gas tax. You know, he, as a chair of a certain department, he took the initiative, he made sure it happened, and he made sure it got done. We know that the clerk was tasked with sending a letter. Whether she sent there or not, I mean, I don't know, right? But she was not tasked with supervising or implementing the ordinance, nor ensuring the resolution is faithfully executed. Under our county board rules, that is expressly the job of the county board chair, stated at section 2F. At section 2P, there's a designation for the chair or the designee. So I think there is blame to share. I think our, excuse me, point of order, I'm speaking.
Member say, can we please?
So we do know that the cannabis taxing ordinance did get enrolled in the codified ordinances. So at some point, the clerk was communicating things that she was supposed to do. So like I said, I don't think the blame is at one person's feet. I think we all need to be, more vigilant. I mean, I am an attorney. I paper, you paper yourself. And I wish she had done that because we wouldn't be having this conversation. So that's
100%, I agree. Member Kajewski.
Thanks. I know the member or Auditor White's gonna be looking at information, and somebody mentioned Chris Schneider, and I also was on the phone with Chris. I didn't spend 10 days like our auditor has, but I talked with Chris and Nick, and first thing Chris said was it was very important. It's $20 million, and as Member Renahan said, he did a nice job in following up with the state. But again, you had to send a certified copy, so he sent the certified copy down, and it was rejected. Chris will tell you that because they needed the blue whatever from the clerk's office. So of course, Chris went down to get a copy of that, and I won't say the name, but Chris can tell you. The person didn't even know what he was talking about. The clerk's whatever seal they have to have down there. Of course, nobody in Springfield would move forward unless you had that specific certification. So Chris, I guess I don't know how he got it, but whoever was in charge of it didn't even know what he was talking about. So he had to get that and then send it to Springfield. They needed the official thing from the clerk's office with some kind of.
Okay. All right, so are there any other questions on this topic right now? Okay, I just want to thank everyone for their comments. I appreciate all of your comments. And I appreciate the good and civil discussion we had here today. I think going forward, I think the plan is to have the auditor come back with a review, and I don't know how long that will take, but I'm looking very forward to that because I think it is very important that we find out exactly what happened. So with that being, yeah, go ahead.
Just ask if they can send, I mean, it can't take but 2 minutes. I mean, everybody should have asked this, although the state's attorney said they asked and they got nothing. But if they have any written procedures in place prior to this. that's
The
easy.
clerk's office?
The clerk's office. for how to
Sure,
do
we
this.
can
And
do,
if they didn't, then give us the new ones, because this was September, so it's 6 months later. Give us the new written procedures, and we should have them before the board meeting ends, because it's easy to find my written procedures and give them to me. And if the answer is, we didn't have any before, and we don't have any now, then at least we can say, well, then start drafting them.
can we get anything? We'll see if we can get
The
that.
written procedures, if they had them before, if they did, that's fine. They identified the issue now in September. Give us the new ones that they have in place. And if they don't have them, at least we know they don't have them and they need to start working on written procedures on something that's this important.
Okay, and we'll see if we can get those to you by the end of county board. Member Krajewski? Okay, will do. Thank you so much. Okay. All right, so we're going to continue. We're going to have the auditor's office look into this, come back hopefully with a good suggestions on how we shore up and a good, I hope to get a good picture of exactly what happened, because we really need to get down to the truth of what happened here. And with that, I do have Karen A. We're going to stop that. Do you want to just? Okay, we'll continue this next. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We are going to continue this discussion at our next finance committee meeting at the end of the month. So we'll bring in Karen Ayala, if Barbara Lynn's office can be available, and then the sheriff. We'll have them for the rest of the discussion. Okay, do we have any other old business? Any new business? Can I have a motion to adjourn? Motion by member Tory, second by Garcia. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries.